Good evening, race fans, and welcome to tonight's coverage of the Esports Racing League Premier Series. Live from the virtual Dover International Speedway, it's time for round number 10 of the 2020 campaign. Justin Prince with you. Be joined in just a moment by the voice of Podium Esports, James Pike. Our producer tonight is Ryan Bauer. Tonight, these drivers get ready for an absolutely challenging race tonight, James. Tire management was key last night in the East NASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series event. It's going to be even bigger tonight.
And a good evening to you all as we come to you from Dover, Delaware for the 10th round of the ERL Premier Series. And we noticed that tire wear was a very big factor here, almost in the way that you think of it in a sort of Darlington, Rockingham sense, or even at Atlanta tracks that you know are effectively cheese graters for tires. So is the Monster Mile in Dover, Delaware. No exception to that. We saw a lot of it in the eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series last night. The fall off in the Delta was drastic. It was about 2 seconds a lap that you lost over the course of a full green flag run. So something that these drivers are going to need to pay attention to over the course of tonight's 85-lap race, Justin Prince. But in the meantime, I think we have to keep our eyes peeled on that battle at the top. Jimmy Mullis, Brandon McKissick. Last week, everything went a little bit crazy at Talladega. Mullis didn't have the greatest of finishes, so what was a about 15-point lead now down to 7 with 3 races remaining in the spring season.
And it gets even worse tonight because just prior to the start of tonight's broadcast, James, it was confirmed that last night Jimmy Mullis had a steering wheel issue. His steering wheel broke mid-race during the eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series event while running in the top 15. He finished multiple laps down in the DNF. He will not be participating in tonight's event, meaning that is a massive swing for the championship standings. It's a big-time race tonight now for Brandon McKissick to try and take the lead tonight with a good finish, and for the birthday boy Braxton DeWeese to try and move himself up into the second depending on how tonight fares.
Makes you wonder if you're going to see McKissick do a little bit more points racing, given how close we are to the end of the spring season. It's certainly a thought that I think has to cross his mind. And even Braxton DeWeese, who currently sits third in points, the birthday boy, and like you said, he's not out of it either. He's only 11 back of McKissick. So this could go a few different ways depending on how things pan out. And DeWeese with the faster qualifying time of the 2 here with about maybe a minute and a half left to go in the session. But DeWeese currently 7th on the grid as it stands, sliding back to 8th as we see one more time posted because McKissick just jumped up into the 4th spot. Drama never fails here, even in qualifying.
Yeah, absolutely. These drivers have been having wicked quick speeds here. It was to the point where some of the drivers in the eNASCAR race for last night, James, talked about how they were going so quick they were potentially literally shredding their tires with how difficult this track is. It's a very technical circuit here at Dover as well, with its 24 degrees of concrete banking and 9 degrees of banking down the straightaways. You're turning at the very minimum 21.9 second lap times in the short run with up to 2 seconds of fall off as the day goes on.
You saw just a moment ago where we are in the world. We are in the state capital of the first state. Dover, Delaware is where Dover International Speedway is located in a quick joint. This is, without question, 20-second lap times. You move around this place. There's a significant amount of banking across the board. And to make things even more interesting, the walls are a little bit tighter now. They just added the safer barriers down the front straightaway that the real-life track has within the updates that this track has received within the past week. So a notoriously tight corner exit here just got a little bit tighter out of 2 and 4.
Absolutely, because when you think about it, it's 3 feet less that you have to work with to get off the corners, and these are already very tricky corners to get off of in the first place because of how important throttle control is. If you hit it too hard, you're likely you're pushing up into that safer barrier or spinning it out. If you put too little gas in, you're likely getting past. It's going to be interesting how these drivers fare tonight, especially with how tricky this track is this evening.
So we get set to take a look at the starting grid, and we tell you where your favorite driver is going to begin tonight's race this evening. It starts with Jose Solis Jr. put down the top time of 21.933 seconds ahead of Blake Reynolds in the 3, the Team Dillon Esports driver in the eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series. Eric Heater rolls off the 3rd spot. 4th will be Brandon McKissick, who stands to gain the points lead. Landon Huffman The Total Advantage team owner will roll off from P5. 6th will be league owner of the ERL, Anthony Alfredo. Cody McCauley starts from 7th. 8th will be Braxton DeWeese, who will chase McKissick at the point standings. 9th, Lucas Cram and Andrew Ramos will start from 10th.
Ryan Kendrick starts on 11th tonight with Brendan Kohler in 12th spot. Alex Bell deep in the field at 13th with Alex Chamberlain in 14th. Just came about a quarter of a lap short at Talladega from a victory. RJ Williams in 15th with Cronke in 16th. Nicholas Hughes, Greg McConey, Nick Olson, and Austin Craven round out the drivers who put in qualifying times tonight, James.
Colby Wells, John Midget, John Dragonetti, Stephen Durham, and Austin Dillon. That Austin Dillon, yes. The Forsyth Country Day School graduate of the class of 2009 is starting shotgun on the field in 25th. As we take a look at the track facts here, this is Dover International Speedway in Dover, Delaware, a 1 mile, 1.6 kilometer oval that opened in 1969, same year that Talladega Super Speedway opened that we were at last week, incidentally. 24 degrees of banking in the turns, 9 degrees of banking on the straightaways. In sim, it is the default time. iRacing Day, May 15th, 2020, right around 3:30 p.m. Eastern Time. We're going to go for 85 laps this evening, somewhere in the ballpark of about 200 miles, about 300 kilometers in change. We have 3 attempts for a green one checker. Track temps: warm, 77 degrees Fahrenheit air temp, 100 degrees Fahrenheit track temp, winds to the west at 11 miles an hour, humidity of 70%, so a little bit more hot and humid than we would expect, and that's only going to exaggerate the tire wear effect that this track is already pretty well known for, Justin.
It's a little bit cooler than what they had in the NASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series race where it bounced around the 110s, but still, there's a lot of grip in the short run, which will challenge a lot of drivers to save their tires so they have pace for the mid to long run. Keep in mind, last night, drivers were afraid to go more than 70 laps. If this goes green, it could be tricky to try and make sure you get to the checker flag without popping tire.
We're going for 85 miles and 136 kilometers, by the way. Make sure we get that stat corrected before we go green flag racing in a bit. In the meantime, though, glad that you're with us here on the ERL Racing Twitch channel or on the Podium Esports Twitch channel that is hosting this broadcast as well. As Jose Solis Jr. and company take off and the green flag is out, we are underway with racing and the ERL Premier Series at Dover International Speedway. Jose Solis Jr. and that trio, Blake Reynolds, all on the top side. We saw Reynolds have issues with tire wear last night. We'll see how well he can manage them, how well the rest of the field can manage them, but pretty good battle here for first, for second, for third, as Anthony Alfredo is fighting on the 55 machine for a position. That's Eric Heater.
And if you're Alfredo, you're in a little bit of trouble, because if you allow anyone underneath you in the middle of the corner entry, you're likely getting freight train. If you are able to hold that bottom line, you're in a better position to try and defend for much of the run until the tire wear starts to really kick in past lap 25.
One of those cases that you have to be very cognizant of. And we see Alfredo stuck on the top side there. I think he finally, he tried to get in front of the 8 of Braxton DeWeese and then finally made the move happen, but he just could not get down to the bottom at all. He was struggling. Difficult moment there for Alfredo, but finally getting in line, and that's going to be one of the key pieces, especially on restarts if we have a lot of them, Justin. Just making sure that you can get down to the inside and avoid getting passed.
Absolutely, and many drivers felt very confident in, or should I say, felt more compelled to try and wind in the short run to make sure they didn't overexert their tires. And mind you, drivers were discussing this a little bit in practice, that this is a bit of a tighter setup for this car for this race tonight, meaning it could be even more trickier to make sure you don't put too much extra throttle in to hit that safer barrier or burn up that right front tire, because the hotter that tire gets, the more tighter your car will get, and the more tighter your car gets, and the more you burn off the tire, the more you lose it.
Tire wear essentially is the motto of the story. How about Landon Huffman, though, in that 75 machine, the belly-up sports Chevy Camaro? He and Anthony Alfredo running nose to tail, but Huffman's made a decent run of things here, starting in P5, already up to the 4th spot now as he clears Eric Heater, who will race alongside Anthony Alfredo, and those two going side by side coming out of 2, and how tricky it is to navigate 2 and 4 here at Dover. We hear people talk about it all the time, just how much it can be an issue to get off these corners, not only to avoid hitting the wall, but also making sure that you don't get on the gas too early and loop yourself around, spin yourself out.
And you take them in two completely different ways as well, James, because in turn 1 and 2, you can carry a little bit more throttle because you're able to have a bit more of a smoother corner exit. But there's a dip right in the middle of the exit at turn 4, right where some of these cars are now, where if you go more than half throttle, you're likely going sideways. Cars getting nearly sideways, though, near contact between Heater and Lucas Cram.
Solis Jr. is out in front by about half a second on Blake Reynolds. Then it's McKissick, then Huffman and Alfredo, and this really great battle between Eric Heater and Lucas Cram. Braxton DeWeese is in the mix. Cody McCauley, who picked up yet another win in the ERL Sportsman Series on Monday night. So that's 2 in a row for the driver of the number 62 machine. He may be able to make some noise as this race progresses.
Yeah, but keep in mind, he's already got a heavy amount of damage from the start of the race on that Toyota Camry. And as we've seen, damage is very vital that you don't get it in this race. That was a part of some of the blocking scene at the end of lap 1 and lap 2 to keep the bottom. And that's going to also be a concern for the temps at the end of the straightaways to make sure you don't overheat your car during this run.
Have to be very careful about that, and wall banging, especially on corner exit, as Alfredo looked to the inside of Huffman for just a moment, but so easy it is to smack the wall with the right side and completely tighten this whole thing up as Lucas Cram made the move to the inside. Blake Reynolds slides back to Anthony Alfredo, landed. Huffman and Alfredo are charging in contact, I think, between the 3 and the 33 there.
Yeah, absolutely. Alfredo actually pushed up into Reynolds, and like we talked about, it will get tighter and tighter as this run goes on. And by the time you reach lap 40, James, that's the point of no return, so to speak. If you burn up your tire at this point of the run, in the short run, there's no way of getting it back. You use that grip, you lose it.
Use the grip and lose all contact. And one car around Steve Durham, and the 10 machine goes around on the back straightaway, and the yellow flag comes out. Contact with 83 himself. Austin Dillon gets into the side of the 10 and loops him around. He smacks the inside retaining wall, and we are under yellow for the first time. As the replay comes up on your screens, you see exactly what happened there. 80 just got right into the 10. It was barely any contact, but here at Dover on corner exit especially, that contact alone could be enough to make all the difference.
Yeah, that was indeed the case there. I think it was just a mix of Durham trying to dime it off the corner because you can double apex turn 1 and 2. And Austin Dillon already being on the bottom side, carrying momentum and trying to get off the throttle, make sure that didn't happen. Just a little bit of 50-50 there, as now all these drivers on the bright side are in that comfortable window to make it on tires.
If they come down now, and guess what? Everybody, and I mean everybody, is going to not take any sort of chances whatsoever. They will come in and get 4 tires and fuel. So back to the old adages that we see in iRacing pit stops. Hit your marks, make sure you don't overshoot your pit stall, and just get in, get out cleanly more than anything else.
Yep, that is exactly the focus as this for these drivers. Get the 4 tires and fuel. Don't make any mistakes. Jose Solis Jr. maybe overran his box just a slight touch, though. May lose him a little bit of time on the pit stop.
As Solis Jr. continues to lead this field off pit road, it'll be tight between the 2 and the 75, but Solis Jr. beats Landon Huffman out of pit road, then Blake Reynolds, then Anthony Alfredo. How about Cody McCauley, though? Had a good pit stop even with all that damage, and he's up to P5 after just edging out Brandon McKissick and Lucas Cram.
And I think he's going on the thought process of track position is so vital on the short tracks when it comes to racing. That's the reason he didn't get the damage fixed. If you go and take that damage repair, say for about 30-40 seconds, however it takes to get it fixed, you might not get back to where he was in the field. So he's trying to ride it out and keep up with these leaders here, because they are really starting to dice it up, and Reynolds was really starting to struggle around that 10 to 12 lap mark.
He was indeed, and we know Reynolds is good at burning off the right rear, no question. So I imagine he's going to be a very, very frequent visitor to pit road more often than not, just depending on how things pan out here. But as it stands, we'll take a moment while we're under the yellow flag to remind you of a few events that are coming up. You can stay on the Podium Esports Twitch channel at 9 p.m. tonight for the next round of the Cars Esports Tour. Round 4 from New Smyrna will come your way. And then tomorrow night on the Podium Esports Twitch channel and Eric Estep's YouTube channel, home of Out of the Groove, the popular NASCAR YouTube series. It's round 2 of the Icebox Pickup Throwdown iRacing Truck Series from Kansas Speedway. That'll go live at 8 p.m. tomorrow night. Saturday, it's the IndyCar iRacing Challenge from the racing capital of the world. Indianapolis plays host to what is, at least for now, the last race in that series. 2:30 p.m. this Saturday, May 2nd on NBCSN, the NBC Sports app, and NBCSports.com/live before we have our usual 1-2 punch. Saturday Night Thunder from Dover at 8 p.m. Eastern on eNASCAR.com/live, and then the NASCAR iRacing Pro Invitational Series from Dover at 1 p.m. on Sunday on Fox Sports 1, and the Fox Sports app. As Jose Solis Jr. launches back into green flag conditions and contention, and Anthony Alfredo went to the bottom to try and hold off Brandon McKissick, and Landon Huffman begins to scoot away from Blake Reynolds. Those three already making a decent trade to the first battle here. Braxton DeWeese, the birthday boy, racing side by side with Conan McCauley for P7 and P6.
Yeah, and the reason we've seen some of this aggressive blocking down some of these straightaways is if you lose the bottom of the turn once, likely somebody's going to dive right on in. That's why Alfredo was so aggressive, to try and make sure he didn't get freight trained again like he was at the start of this race. But McCauley, even with that damage, is showing some good speed. Just cannot get a run quite yet to get past McKissick.
Here comes Landon Huffman, though. He's been charging throughout this race, and the 75 will lead at the stripe, and I think take it over easily. He goes to P1. Looks like Reynolds had the opportunity to get underneath Solis for a moment, and then decided not to press the issue at this time, so now he's going to have to deal with the hard-charging Anthony Alfredo, as Reynolds got on the brakes very early there and lost a few spots.
Yeah, now Huffman's got that clean air, but Reynolds is in that absolute danger point here of if he doesn't find the first available hole, he might drop his way all the way to the end of the top 10. Look at how many cars already line up. Bit of a squeeze right behind.
Everybody fanning out right around where Blake Reynolds is. He settles back into the racing groove, but not before he slides back.
Oh, trouble!
Contact with McKissick and Cram, and somehow McKissick saved it. I don't quite know how. They all checked up behind him, though, so they'll go 3 wide for a moment, then go back to 2 wide in the corner, and contact between McKissick and Blake Reynolds. And there goes Braxton DeWeese as well. The yellow flag will come out, and what kind of implications will that have for the point standings? It is a train wreck here at the entrance of the back straightaway, and we will take a look at the replay and see what happened. Everybody went around, but Justin Prince, this all started between the 87 and McKissick and Blake Reynolds in the 3.
Yeah, this was not pretty. Right there, McKissick pushed up, was already feeling a little bit tight, and then everyone just accordion affected their way into the corner exit. Everyone's trying to get back on the gas to that point. You have little time to react, and it was talked about how it's a self-cleaning racetrack. A lot of those machines self-clean their way right across the surface.
You look at some of the names involved. Alexander Krunke was swept up in this. Nick Olson got some damage. Braxton DeWeese was collected. Alex Bell had nowhere to go. I think, if my memory serves me correctly, Ryan Kendrick got the slightest piece of this, and then more of it later on. The 37 machine of R.J. Williams was involved in this. Alec Chamberlain, who was so close last week. Austin Craven got a good amount of damage in this. I think the 45 was in there too. Austin Dillon just went down to the bottom and just sat. Interestingly enough, I think he actually avoided damage on his number 3 machine, but he just went to the apron and just stopped and waited for them to sort themselves out before he went going again.
The funny thing is, he is the only person even consider staying out here in total with the pace laps, about 5 green flag laps in total, 8 overall. It's going to be very dicey on the start for him, but mostly everybody else did come down for the tires, as the rest of the field just had an absolute blazing battle off the pit lane.
Good stuff there, but it's Austin Dillon and Ryan Kendrick who will lead us to the green flag. Jose Solis was next, then Landon Huffman, Anthony Alfredo, Lucas Cram, and Cody McCauley, your first 5 off of pit road.
Keep in mind that Kendrick did miss the lane last time by, or miss his pit box rather, so with that damage should be coming down, it is, but It shouldn't be a surprise to see how Landon Huffman's been doing in this race. He's been getting stronger and stronger with each race he's ran in Euro competition the past couple of weeks, James. Came away with the victory in Saturday Night Thunder, and just for starting tonight, actually set up a brand new rig in time for this race. Still has only one monitor, didn't get the chance to invert his G27 pedals, but got a brand new sim seat rig in part for tonight's race. Looking to get it 100% by the weekend.
What you're telling me is he's going to be quick. Is basically what I'm hearing there.
He's already been very quick on this racetrack. He's been one of the quickest drivers all night so far, but it's going to be dicey on this start here, James, because even on fresh tires, many drivers in the NASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series told me they expected tons of tire spin and a lot of over torque and revving on that front straightaway and off of turn number 4 off the restart. Some may even start in first gear. Even a difference in 5-lap older tires on a green flag run like Austin Dillon's are vastly noticeable.
So, wait and see how things pan out. Landon, of course, the son of former NASCAR Goodies Dash Series star Robert Huffman. Do you remember the early 2000s, the late 1990s, and that White House scheme? Honestly, I'll openly admit apple juice does kind of sound pretty good right about now. As Austin Dillon, the 2018 Daytona 500 champion, will lead them to the green flag and take off. We're underway with racing in Dover once again. He'll have the oldest tires by about 8 laps on the rest of the field, but the track position is one that I think he's been looking for. He hasn't really had that yet. Hasn't really had the opportunity to flex his muscle and work within clean spaces, but it might all be for naught because here comes Landon Huffman at the 75.
And this is where you play defense. Already Dylan letting the car roll a little bit more. But everybody else, the more that Dylan lets it roll, the more he sets up potential dives for the inside. If he lets this open too many times, had to cut off Landon Huffman on the bottom.
If you're Landon Huffman, I think you're switching up your exit point, or at least looking for a spot to make sure that you don't end up running over Dillon in the middle of the corner. Got to time these so that you get your momentum lined up the right way to get alongside him, and did it there just about perfectly. No way you could stop it there. Up and nailed it. Here comes Anthony Alfredo with the 75 to go to P2.
Yep. Took a perfect corner exit, and that's just that small difference in tires, about half a tenth.
Contact there. Austin Dillon gets nosed, and I think I saw Brendan Kohler and one more car up in the fence. That would be Eric Heater in the 55 as the yellow flag comes out again, and there was nothing that I think they could have done. Dillon checked up after there was contact with the 33 of Anthony Alfredo. Dillon, I think, tried to come down on his T. Dillon management client and ended up just sort of sliding up and then got rear-ended by Brendan Kohler, who had nowhere to go once the 3 machine collected itself and kept itself in one piece. Kohler ends up in the fence along with Heater in the 55. One more car that was swept up, one of the total advantage machines, R.J. Williams, with a decent amount of damage in that incident too.
Do you see those sparks, though, on the right side of the wall just before the contact? I think Dillon may have scrubbed the wall a little bit, James, and that kind of sent him just a touchdown into Alfredo and just nowhere else for everyone else to go once everyone's tried to save it. Keep an eye on that safer barrier again. Little less speed, maybe try to arc it up. Yeah, tap the wall.
Ever so slightly. It wasn't a lot, but it was just enough to set that whole chain reaction off. I think that's the biggest thing to note in all of this. It barely takes anything at Dover to mess up your straightaways, whether or not it's getting too quickly back to the throttle on corner exit or just glancing the wall down the middle of the straightaway. In either case, it almost seems like anything that happens, you end up in a very sticky situation.
Yeah, and that was an extremely sticky one, absolutely. And now, I don't know if we were expecting this much attrition tonight in this race, James, but there are plenty of cars that have a lot of damage to get repaired at this point. Don't blame some of these cars, even with the significant amount of damage, to stay out. Even Alfredo, who was just involved in that incident, elected to stay out on the racetrack.
Alfredo elected to stay out, so did Landon Huffman, Lucas Cram, and Cody McCauley. So, 4 of the fastest drivers in this field, in fairness to all of them, but you lose that 5-lap advantage on tires. We don't necessarily know how important it is or isn't, but you would think that could actually mean a little something here at Dover, more so than most other places.
Yeah, I think it's going to be fairly even just on a couple green flag laps in total, James, in the first 15-20 laps of the run. But once you get past that, that's where the fresher tires start to come in a little bit. It's just, again, the gamble of you want to try and get track position because you never know what's going to happen behind you. Austin Dillon tried that. Gamble didn't necessarily play out 100% well, I think he planned. But even though he was involved in an incident, James, Austin Dillon's in 8th. Remember, he started at the back of the field tonight.
After all of that, and oh, by the way, starting right next to the Team Dillon Esports driver, Blake Reynolds. So you've got the 3 right next to the 3. If you wanted any more confusion, call us. We'll be here for you when you need it. As we get set for the restart on lap 30 of 85, it will be Huffman, then Alfredo, then Cram, McCauley, and then Nick Olson of the 24, who won the Dubois 175 last week at Talladega. He will be that car in P5 to get us going as Huffman gets sent to lead us to the green flag. Justin Prince.
Yeah, and Huffman has been very strong so far, has shown he's very quick. Alfredo, though, he's been not afraid to block on these starts. Good launch for all the drivers.
Really good launch for Landon Huffman. He absolutely dusted the field on that restart. Alfredo, by default, ended up jumping down to the inside lane. Looks like Austin Dillon stuck up on the top side on your first battle for position. Could be Cody McCauley and Lucas Cram for P3, P4 coming down the back.
Good run for McCauley off the corner, though, to be able to defend. But keep in mind, Cram's got a really crushed in front nose. And now you have Solis, who is one of the quickest cars on the track overall tonight, with everybody else ready to come forward with the fresh tires.
Everybody else trying to follow his shooting charge with them. Lucas Cram beginning to slide back on the older rubber. He's one of the drivers that stayed out along with your top 3. So Cram already in danger of losing some spots. Huffman, though, out in front of Alfredo by maybe about a car length or 2.
Yeah, now it looks like Cram is going to have a problem here. That damage may be a little bit too much to be able to even keep up on the small amount of tires. 0.3 of a second lost at least last time by. Check that, 0.6. While many of the air cars around him running the 22 flats to 22 threes.
Everybody just around that ballpark of the 22s, but it's that front 3 that are really starting to run away with this as Alfredo looks to the inside of Landon Huffman for the race lead. And Cody McCauley, even with that damage, is still charging hard in P3. He's driving away from Jose Solis Jr., who's got a rearview mirror full of Blake Reynolds.
Yeah, he's in the top 3 in the speed right now, but keep your eye on Alfredo. Good run off the corner, going for the dive.
Big moves from Alfredo to get underneath the 75, and Huffman just decides to check up and not force the issue. So Anthony Alfredo to the point. Remember, he won the season opener for the ERL Premier Series in Daytona back in February. Got all the way down to the apron to snatch the win away at the line, and he became the winner of the first ever ERL Premier Series event. Huffman in second, McCauley in third. Good battle a little bit further back. We'll go back to Lucas Cram and Andrew Ramos in 7th and 8th. You've got a group there with Alex Bell and Greg McConey fighting for position 2.
And Cram tried to really squeeze the 7 down, make it 3 wide in turn 3. This could get trouble. Good smart move by Cram to back off.
One of those cases where you got to be very careful about it, because if you try and pull that off on corner exit, someone is going to wreck. Ramos clears Bell, so he's up into 7th. Nick Olson has driven away from all of this by about 3/4 of a second. He's trying to set his sights on Blake Reynolds in that 5th position, but for now, it's now looks like Greg McConey and Lucas Cram, but continues to slide back. There goes Cram up on the top side. He's still stuck there. R.J. Williams underneath him, and Austin Dillon in the 3 coming for his position as well. It would slide Cram all the way back to 13th, maybe potentially, but Cram gets in front of AD before the 3 gets alongside the 44.
Yeah, and Austin Dillon seeming like he's again struggling with the tightness. He does have back end damage. He's having to get off the gas a lot more earlier in some points on corner exit. Like he's trying to time it up on apex a bit too early, but the caution is out. Trouble in the front straightaway with 17th place.
It's Nick Hughes in the 69 machine who spins around at the beginning of the front straightaway, and yeah, classic case of overdrove the corner, caught the wall on the exit of the corner, spun around on the front straightaway. Nothing to it. I don't know if anybody else got damage in that, but a largely self-inflicted wound there for Nick Hughes in the 69.
go back a little bit further, you can just listen to how we got on the gas way too early in corner apex in 3 and 4. If you hit the gas about even half a second early, right about there, that's where you just go up and up and up. Then bam, right there, even without the safer barrier there, that would still plow the wall down.
And it's a hard hit, too. And as all these drivers come down pit road, we're going to take a break for just a moment, but we'll stay side by side to keep you the action. Don't go anywhere as you watch coverage of the ERL Premier Series from Podium Esports on the ERL. Welcome back to coverage of the ERL Premier Series live from Dover International Speedway in Dover, Delaware. Anthony Alfredo wins the battle off of pit road as Braxton DeWeese decides to stay out and at least try and get some track position. We'll see if he comes down pit road a little bit later in the yellow flag. But Alfredo, Huffman, Jose Solis, Cody McCauley, Blake Reynolds, your first 5 off of pit road. And for as much as we talked about tire wear, I think we've seen 2 things. 1, it definitely does exist. 2, I don't know if we're really going to see it play into this race because everybody's just been circulating under yellow for a good chunk of it. We haven't had our green flag run longer than about 10 laps, JP.
Yeah, it's become essentially a war of attrition. Miles the Monster has been very hungry tonight, let's put it that way. And this plays more into the trends of what may have been potentially the possibility for last night's eNASCAR race, where you have this type of trouble where the trends were on average 8 cautions over 200 laps. We've got a fair amount of cautions so far in this race, so we might see a lot of strategy come into play if this continues like this. Wouldn't be surprised if we see a later caution flag or 2, James. We see people try and take 2 tires to try and hold on to track position and hope that that's enough to win a race.
Will we? It's a big question. Genuine question, but a big question at that, as Alfredo will be your leader for this restart, which should come, I suspect, on lap 40, call it maybe 3 of 85. So right around the halfway mark. We'll, I guess, cross halfway once we get to, yeah, about 83 and a half, somewhere in the ballpark of.
Yeah, these drivers are already setting up for the 2 to go signal, but many more, mind you, having to get up repairs already in this race. Nicholas Hughes, no front clip. Alec Chamberlain, no front clip. Lucas Cram trying to push his nose back out. McKissick with tons of damage, just shut his engine off. DeWeese, lucky dog, had to get his 4 tires in service and get some of his repair. We have many drivers who have crushed in front noses across this racetrack too, and keep in mind, you get engine damage in this racetrack too, James, because of how quick the pace has been all week. You're in trouble, in big time trouble.
I think at Dover, in comparison to a lot of other places, because you are so high in the revs, in those power bands, for a very large chunk of this race, you are right up, right on it. There's not really much low power that you pull from these engines at Dover. You're always in sort of at bare minimum the middle of the RPM range to way up top. So with these things constantly wound up and you don't have a full power motor, you don't have 2,000 idling RPMs, you may be in trouble, as Anthony Alfredo will lead them to green over Landon Huffman, Jose Solis Jr., Cody McCauley, Blake Reynolds, Nick Olson, Alex Bell. Then it's Andrew Ramos, Greg McConey, R.J. Williams.
And I'm curious, now that we've had the cautions, precautions, if we do get a longer run here, because this is to the point where we've seen these types of runs come into play. Wouldn't be surprised if we get one here, as long as nobody makes a mistake. There's the chance we have a good long run here.
Good long run coming here as Alfredo continues. He takes off. Landon Huffman rolls off into P2, or at least tries to. Jose Solis Jr. still alongside that number 75. He might make the move. They're side by side for the moment. Huffman, though, will clear the 2, so you can slide the 75 into P2.
Already a bit of contact, though, towards the back of the pack. Austin Dillon got into Greg McConey and nearly turned him for 10th place. Everybody else, though, just able to get themselves single file. Most of them following that middle to bottom groove to try and slide around.
Most of them. Emphasis on the most of them, but they are more fanned out back there as Alfredo continues to pace about the front 7 or 8 who are all in a single file line, just trying to keep pace with the 33 machine. But Anthony Alfredo, you look at his numbers on the bank tracks like this, said he liked Bristol a lot, felt like he had a good car in the first event of Saturday Night Thunder at Bristol at the beginning of this month, and no surprise that the track probably most analogous to Bristol in the schedule outside of Bristol itself. He's putting down some fast times, fast numbers, and he's leading the race.
Yeah, right now, Alfredo, in terms of the lap pace, up there in the top 3 quickest drivers all night. Him, Huffman, Solis Jr. Those 3 drivers, outside of McCauley, are the only ones who have set a lap time once in the 22 flats tonight. These 3 have been hustling. So is McCauley, though. He's trying to make it all 4 of those cars in the top 4.
Pushing as hard as he can, and while he continues to push, we'll take a moment to bring you tonight's iRacing Midway Race Break, which as always is brought to you by iRacing, the world's leading online racing simulation. Developed from the beginning as a centralized racing and competition service, iRacing organizes, hosts, and officiates races on virtual tracks all around the world. iRacing is home to a wide variety of officially sanctioned series, with racing for the Australian Supercars, IndyCar, IMSA, NASCAR, the World of Outlaws, and more. Alfredo leads over Huffman, Solis, Reynolds, and McCauley, your top 5. But it's Alex Bell, Nick Olson, Andrew Ramos, RJ Williams, and Austin Dillon, the rest of the top 10.
An 11th spot, Greg McConey trying to reel back in Austin Dillon. Crockett in 12th position, trying to fight with Lucas Cram. Cram just flipped that spot. Midjet is in 14th. Dragonati with a quiet race in 15th. Kendrick, Craven, McKissick, DeWeese, and Chamberlain round out the top 20.
Nick Hughes has scored in 21st. Last car running in this race, Colby Wells, Brendan Kohler, Eric Eater, and C. Durham have pulled it behind the wall. They are done for the evening. And that concludes tonight's iRacing Midway Race Break. With over 130,000 drivers on the service and over 80 laser scan tracks and cars to choose from, iRacing is the original esports racing game. And for more information, you can visit iRacing.com today. Really good battle for the lead here. Huffman continuing to dog Alfredo, but Jose Solis has worked his way up into this fight. We can't rule out Blake Reynolds and Cody McCauley. They're right there, too, if any of these front 3 slip up. But a 3-way melee for the point spot at Dover as we work lap 51 of 85.
And you can see Solis is trying to change up lines, trying to diamond it off the corner, get an extra little bit of momentum to try and get something going here. Huffman's trying to go for the harder entry, back up the corner, try and get some more speed off kind of approach. It's just, again, it's so difficult to build up enough momentum when the bottom line is the dominant line like it has been tonight.
And the top line, I think, over the course of a 200, 300, 400 lap race would find a way to build in, but with this race being so short at only 85 laps, I'm not necessarily certain if we're going to see that. And what we're going to see is more of Alfredo and Huffman duking it out up in front of this field. Huffman with speed and with pace, he was faster by 5/100ths of a second that last time by, or 5/1000ths of a second that last time by, rather, as Huffman continues to work over the 33.
That's at the same time as McCauley's now giving shots to the back end of Reynolds. You've seen it in a 1 and 2 already. It just seems that once lap 10 kicks in on a run, Reynolds his tires seem to completely melt off the race car, and he has to let the car roll so much more than the rest of the cars around him that it ends up bunching everybody up. The bright side, if you're Landon Huffman and Anthony Alfredo, you're at least now 7 car lengths in front of the 3.
At least. Emphasis on the at least. You never totally know how things are going to shake out in these final 30 laps or so. Alfredo still your leader, then Huffman, then Solis, then Reynolds, McCauley, Bell. Not really too many other battles to speak of. There are some packs, but as far as side-by-side action for position goes, not all that much here at Dover.
Yeah, and again, it was talked about by some drivers that they expected that to potentially be the case where it would come down to, for that case, open. Contact over the wall. Jose Solis Jr. hit the outside fence. Now he's got significant damage on his Toyota Camry.
So there goes the number 2 Toyota Camry back to the field. You saw Blake Reynolds and Cody McCauley get around that 2 machine. Next in line would be Alex Bell, and now we'll see if Reynolds has the ability to run down Landon Huffman in the later stages of this race. It'll be interesting to see what that number 3 car can pull off.
And keep in mind, James, just about 10 seconds of damage cost 0.2 of a second to 2 drivers in the NASCAR race last night. From that side damage is so important. You don't damage the quarter panels and in turn damage how the downforce and aerodynamics are on the race car. McCauley's been able to do a great job in trying to counteract that, but Solis is already showing he's trying to struggle a little bit. Lost a 10th last time by.
Thinking that tires might be the answer on that? Maybe press it a little bit too hard, Justin, or do you think it might be something else?
Might try to press a little bit too hard to try and get a run for position and may have just mowed that safer barrier down just that extra little bit, because it's so important to try and get speed off the corner to set up a pass for the corner entry the next time around, because it takes multiple laps in turn to set up that run.
Great racing here between Landon Huffman and Anthony Alfredo. Blake Reynolds in the mix too. Here comes that 3 machine. He looked to the inside of Reynolds for the moment and then thought better than to press the issue at that point. So he'll try again, probably within a lap or 2. But the 3 machine looks pretty sporty behind the 75 all of a sudden.
Yeah, I might have started saving in the past couple laps or so, because it's important to try and keep the right front tire fairly cool, because it allows you more cut as this run continues to progress. It's getting to that point where if you push too much in this stint of the race, that's where trouble usually ensues. If you're able to keep it cool enough, keep it nice, calm, and composed as a driver, you're likely going to be flying in the next 10 laps.
I'll tell you what, Anthony Alfredo just about lost it off of 4 that last time by. He was sideways in that 33 before Landon Huffman decided to give him another run for his money, and it looks like the 75 may be coming for that spot too, unless Blake Reynolds decides to have other ideas.
That's it. And caution flag is out on the back straightaway all of a sudden. Massive stack of 4 different cars stacked up in a bundle.
Austin Craven, John Dragonetti, I think Alec Chamberlain is part of that bunch, and one more. It would be Nick Hughes in the 69. So there's your quartet. And as all this panned out, I believe it was Dragonetti who was first to go around. We'll take a look at the replay and see. But Dragonetti ends up getting the help and going around, and just a little bit of contact for the lap car, that 13 machine of Ryan Kendrick, and they come together, and then Dragonetti just has absolutely nowhere to go. He gets driven into right at the end of the backstretch.
Might have had a little influence from technical issues, but still, he tried to leave space, but Dragonetti looked like he even hit the wall before then. You see that big bundle of cars. 3 other drivers just had absolutely nowhere to go.
Nothing they could have done to, because you're traveling so quickly, especially compared to other tracks of this size on the Cup circuit, and that is the narrowest part of the racetrack. That back straightaway, there's barely any room to escape, especially on quarter entry. It's a little bit better on the exit into 3 and 4, but for the most part, either case, you wreck there, you're in big trouble no matter what, as the entire field comes down pit road once again.
Yeah, and this really will shake things up once more again, because as we've seen, cautions breed cautions, and they're already bump drafting through the pit lane.
I thought we were in Talladega last week, Justin. Why are they trying to bump draft here?
Probably saying, come on, go an extra RPM further, shall you? I think Alfredo had to back up his car a touch, though, from it.
Potentially. Let's see where the 33 comes out off of pit road and what sort of stop the people around him get. I think he's going to get beat here by at least a few folks. There goes Cody McCauley in that number 62, who might just get the lead off of that pit road battle between the two, but instead it was Landon Huffman who won the battle, then Blake Reynolds, then McCauley, who jumps up a few spots, then Scholas, then Alfredo, who went back to the 5th spot. So Alfredo with a poor pit stop and poorly timed too. 20 laps to go when they come back to the stripe.
1.7 seconds longer in the lane, so that is a crucial time for that type of mistake. Still fairly decent amount of time depending on how these starts go, since he'll be on the bottom side to try and gain some time back, but it's been difficult to try and keep up with Landon Huffman when he's gotten clean air. We'll have to see how this restart fares when the green flag waves once more.
Huffman in very good shape, I think, right where you need to be, and he's been so quick all night long, without question. He's been one of the few cars that's been able to work his way through the field, collectively pick off and pass all kinds of different vehicles and make it to the front. And now, within 20 laps to go, he's going to be back on point, back with an ability to just carry this the rest of the way if the rest of the field's not careful.
Absolutely, and don't forget to talk about guys like McCauley. You mentioned how he's been strong in his starts already in the Sportsman Series, coming away with the victory at Dover on Monday. He's been very impressive in his Cup starts, too, or rather, I should say, in the Cup car starts in the Premier Series so far. Did well in his first appearance, did well at the Super Speedway at Talladega, is doing really well tonight.
Indeed is doing really well tonight. As I look through the field, I'm just trying to pick out a few names here about R.J. Williams. Let's take a moment to talk about the 37, just because he was caught up in that mess at the entrance of the back straightaway some 15-20 laps ago and got all smushed up, and here he is, Justin Prince. He's back in the top 10, currently running in 7th.
And that comes down in part to making sure you stay out of trouble and you stay aware of what's going on around you. Trying to avoid any of the incidents. There's a lot of chance you can wheel that machine on forward depending on what happens here again. We've seen how dominant the bottom has been. He's on that bottom. He's going to get the chance to start alongside Austin Dillon once the green flag drops, and right behind Alex Bell and co. Or should I say Alfredo?
Alfredo, who will restart in 5th. It'll be Huffman, Reynolds, then McCauley, Solis Jr., Alfredo, then Bell, Williams, 83, Andrew Ramos, and Alexander Krenke, your top 10 for this restart, which will come with just under 20 laps to go at the Monster Mile.
I'm curious where Huffman elects to go. He's been using the banking as a ramp off of turn number 4 each time, trying to jump on forward, gain himself 2-3 car lengths each and every start. I'm curious to see if he thinks to eventually stack the box, try and get someone to make a mistake in the mid-pack.
Potentially, although he's been getting away on restarts so well, I don't even know if you need to try and stack up this field. It's just a matter of go, and the leader gets such a big jump here because they've got not only control of the pace but control of the throttle. Maybe not necessarily as good that time, but still good enough to get Huffman to P1 and Reynolds to the inside if he wants it. He'll stay up top going into 1 for this first time, but eventually we'll get to the bottom as they look to go 3 wide. They thought about going 3 wide for P3. Alfredo beginning to charge on Cody McCauley for the spot.
That was a risky move there, but Alfredo tried to go as low as he can, force a mistake. Already gained 1 position, recovered all of a sudden, and he might have a chance to get by McCauley in the next couple laps. But the quicker he gets the job done, the better, because Reynolds and Huffman have already ran away by another 3/4 tenths of a second.
Already beginning to see the signs that these two are going to scoot away as Blake Reynolds continues to push Landon Huffman for all he's worth, and the fresh tires really working to the 3 cars' favor. You know how quick he can be on clean rubber, and absolutely no reservations now. You're within the final 20 laps to go. This is just about busting your teeth as much as you can to get to the front, no matter what happens.
And keep in mind, the track has been cooling down between these caution flags. Now 95 degrees Fahrenheit as well. Most grip they've had all day. They're already setting their fastest lap times of the race.
Already beginning to push it now down into the 21s, which was the fastest lap of the race for Landon Huffman that last time by. Reynolds was only 4 1,000ths off his best. McCauley just ran his best lap too, so speed's really beginning to pick up at Dover in the late going.
And I think this is playing out to Reynolds' hand now. It showed a bit of struggles when the track was fairly hot. Now that the track is cooling down more and more as this race goes on, grip's coming to him. The handling's coming to him, able to get more corner speed throughout this racetrack.
And with the way that Reynolds likes to drive these things, I almost wonder if he may be suited for one of the cold weather, maybe even a night track under 55 degree skies. Just something that'll sort of equalize things and make it easier for drivers to, get a good feel of their car and not have to worry about the grip levels so much, since you don't have the sunlight sabotaging the amount of spunk and the amount of good is in your wheels, as Landon Huffman continues to lead for the moment. But Blake Reynolds in the number 3 is right there, ready to pounce if he makes any sort of mistake whatsoever. This is Blake Reynolds' race.
This is a big-time opportunity for him, absolutely. And keep in mind, he said on social media before that race last night for eNASCAR that he doesn't like Dover and Dover doesn't like him. This is a good way to try and gain a little respect for Miles the Monster and maybe like the track a little bit more after this one.
Maybe, just maybe, working our way towards the final 10 laps now. Huffman in control of this. Reynolds still chasing. McCauley and Alfredo in third. Good battle between Alex Bell and Jose Solis Jr. That's for 5th and 6th at this time. But it's all Landon Huffman for the moment ahead of Blake Reynolds by 1/10 of a second at best.
Jose Solis Jr. now that he's got the fresher tires on that car, seems to be driving a little bit better now, even with that damage. But it's still going to be tricky to try and keep up, especially since the leaders continue to set the fastest laps on the track in the 22.1s to 22.2s right now.
And you can see tires falling off, but these drivers at front won't mind it one bit. Huffman now coming to 10 laps to go out right here at Dover, and that lead is maintained at about 0.2 of a second. Reynolds has gotten to it, but he hasn't found a way to get around him, at least not yet.
Clip the apron a little bit, though, through turn number 2's exit that time, trying to double apex it. Might be pushing a little bit too hard here. You have to think, if he pushes too hard, we might see what happened at the start of the race once again from him.
Well, there's no doubt that these are all the sorts of things you're trying to keep in your mind, but as it stands, Huffman still just hanging out. Looks like Solis, at least for a moment, looked like he was going to be ready to give the pressure to Alex Bell, and then decided to think better of it as Huffman continues to circulate around over with P1 in his sights.
And I like what Solis Jr. is doing, trying to arc it down to places you usually don't expect to try and get extra runs. Bell, though, really gave him the squeeze, trying to make sure he didn't get that run. Solis Jr., though, too much momentum to stop.
Just a little bit, and just enough to make sure that Solis Jr. can keep it at bay. Here comes Landon Huffman to start lap 79 of 85. It is all the 75 machine at this time. What can Blake Reynolds do? What can McCauley do? What can Anthony Alfredo do to try and shut down Landon Huffman?
It's going to come down to a mistake at this point, or you need to have a quick caution flag to try and bunch the field back up. Because right now, he's now half a tenth slower a lap and is really getting tight once again. Might have over-sorted the tires to try and keep up with Huffman here, all while Huffman was in a position to just try and ride and let the tires cool off.
And now everything feels like it's in really good shape for Landon Huffman. A yellow flag would be the only thing, I think, at this stage that would completely destroy his ability to win this race. That and any sort of mental error that would send him to the back of the field. So far, though, Huffman's made neither run virtually the perfect race with one of the cleanest cars in the field. He's now not far away from victory in Dover, Delaware.
Yeah, really good shape as long as he doesn't make any mistakes. Had a strong run, remember, on Saturday and Saturday Night Thunder. How about this? First time in a brand new rig. Looking like he is one of the quickest drivers all night long. In range to have some of the most led laps as well by the checker flag.
Working towards lap 83 of 85. 3 laps to go when they cross the stripe. Reynolds is falling back just a bit, but he's still there. He's the only one, though, that can give Landon Huffman a shot for this now. Everybody else is falling off the back end, so we have 3 laps to go at Dover. It is still Landon Huffman in control.
Looks like he's trying to push back once again. May have realized he overheated the tires. Try to cool him off for a couple laps. Now he's pushing again. Might have 1 or 2 chances at the race lead with 2 to go.
Double popsicle sticks in the air this time high for Landon Huffman, who will wait and wait for the move to come from Blake Reynolds. And where does it, Justin Prince? Where are you looking for it if you're the 75?
You have to protect the bottom here because Reynolds will try and dive as soon as you leave it open. Expect the move to the bottom side. If not, expect a slight bump in 3 and 4 of the white flag lap.
Oh, Huffman got the wall coming to the white flag. There goes Blake Reynolds to the inside. Huffman goes down to the apron and blocks it and somehow kept Reynolds at bay. That might just drag McCauley into it some way, somehow, but Reynolds couldn't capitalize. He backed out of it, and Landon Huffman might have just saved himself yet. We'll see what happens into 3. Oh, big set there. Reynolds sent it right into the back of Huffman and didn't have enough momentum, and somehow, after a wild last lap, Reynolds will get the fence, hang on to second, but Landon Huffman gets his first win in the Esports Racing League Premier Series at Dover after Huffman just about threw it away. Coming to the white, he almost got it in the fence and ran it up so far that Blake Reynolds is able to get underneath him, but Reynolds backed out. I think Reynolds had the opportunity. We'll take a look at the replay here momentarily to see what happened on that last lap in particular, but Landon Huffman coming out of 4 to get the white, got the fence, got the wall, and Blake Reynolds got to his inside and just about got into him. I think Reynolds checked up just enough to make sure that he didn't end up in trouble as Huffman comes down the back here and somehow, some way managed to save it. It was a big move there from Reynolds, and then as they came through 3 and 4, you'll see it here. Huffman gets the fence and gets it good. Reynolds gets to his inside. You see the 75 almost go down to the bottom of the block, and they both check up. So it was mere inches, I think, that kept the 3 from getting into the left rear of the 75. And then after all of that, it was one big sin for Blake Reynolds, who certainly tried. Give him credit, he tried, and then just tried to keep his foot in it and eventually smacked the fence himself coming out of the corner and left Huffman free to get the race win. Justin Prince.